The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Let's go is right. The UFC has descended on London, England for its first trip here since March 2019. 3 years since the Octagon was in the O2 Arena. It will be back in there for UFC Fight Night London this Saturday. Headlined, of course, by a heavyweight fight between Alexander Volkov and Tom Aspinall. Hello, everybody. I am Brett Okamoto. I am in London, actually. Ian Parker is joining me from his home in Florida. We are here to talk about all of the best bets, all the parlays. This is where you want to be for your betting advice because my man Ian, he is on a hot streak lately.
Yeah, you know what, Brett? I'm jealous I'm not there with you. It looks great over there. You got a real good card coming up on Saturday. And last week, again, we hit the parlay. Great odds. We're going to do it again this week. We got some real sneaky picks. I know everyone was loving some of those dog plays we did last week on the prelims. Don't worry, we got some of those today as well.
Oh, yeah. Always love the dog plays. Always love the winners. You've been giving us a lot of those lately. So let's take a look right away at this UFC Fight Night main card. It is a nice-looking card. 6 fights on this main card. This starts at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific on ESPN+. Tom Aspinall, Alexander Volkov, again, that's in the main event. Goes to Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker. Dan returns to 145. That could have been a main event if you ask me. Paddy Pimlet taking on Kazula Vargas in the third fight of the evening. Gunnar Nelson, Takashi Soto. You got Molly McCann on the card, of course. Ilia Topuria. Some things to talk about with him, and we will do so. But we're going to start, Ian, with that main event, and I do think it's a pretty fascinating one. You know, sometimes we look at these fights, and I think to myself, you know what? Come Sunday morning, we're going to be saying to ourselves, we should have known. We should have known what was going to happen in this fight. Either Volkov is just the experience is going to be too much, or Aspinall, all of the things we've been saying about him, all the things we've been hearing about him, his potential is just going to shine through. I think that this is going to be a very definitive result. I just am not sure which way it's going to go, and that's reflected in the line as it's so close. What do you make of this?
Look, styles make fights, and everything you just said couldn't be any more true. You know, is Volkov ready to kind of stop the hype train of Tom Aspinall and continue up the ladder? He's on a nice little win streak himself. Does the experience play a factor, or is Tom Aspinall truly ready to break through and get to the top? Is Volkov now just a really, really solid gatekeeper? For me, I'm going to roll the dice on the prospect here in Tom Aspinall. You know, people are talking about with Volkov, the experience, the cardio. I can't question Tom Aspinall's cardio yet because we haven't had a chance to see it. Just because he hasn't been in rounds 4 or 5 doesn't mean he can't do it. You know, the one thing that I really liked about Tom Aspinall, and I want to point out the Andrei Arlovski fight. Round 1, he lost that round 10-9. He looked a little out of place, maybe a little starstruck fighting one of his heroes. Round 2, he came out, bull rushed him, took him down, and submitted him. I think that's where the big difference is going to be here, is going to be if and when he takes Volkov to the ground. I'm hoping it's on 1 or 2 tries, because if it gets past that, that's a lot of energy he's going to exert. He also has very polished boxing. We saw it against Sergey Spivak in his last fight, throwing those elbows. I think he's a very well-rounded, composed fighter. You know, he's young, he's on the up and up. I just like where he is at. I think if this fight goes to the ground where he can really push through with his jiu-jitsu is where he gets it done. So we're going to go with Tom Aspinall here.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Ian, and I got to say, you know, obviously we know how confident you are in some of your different plays when we hear about your best bets. Those are the ones that you are the most confident in. So I don't know if this is one of your best bets, but I would like to hear you say just how confident are you in this pick, and what when you have these situations where the guy has looked so good and you want to take advantage of value on him before those start to get too big, but you haven't seen some of those questions answered because we just haven't seen it, right? He hasn't really fought outside of the first round. He's in a situation now where he's going to be fighting in front of the biggest crowd that he's ever fought in his entire career. Some of those things can turn into jitters. Some of them can affect guys that we just haven't seen long careers out of. So does it give you pause, or do you know, we don't talk about units all that much on this show, but does it make you kind of size your bet down a little bit because of those maybe unknowns?
Well, Brett, actually, that's a great question when it comes to the betting side of things. So I'm going to kind of take your question. I'm going to reverse it a little bit in order to answer this, right? So for me, if you want to play that game, if you are a little hesitant because of everything you just said about Tom Aspinall, more of the unknowns compared to what we've seen out of Volkov, then play it as the night goes. You know, if you haven't taken Aspinall earlier in the week where he was plus 110, I think now he's at minus 130. That's a big change. It's a big difference in what we call the value, right? So for me, if you then want to even take a prop, kind of mitigate the odds a little bit, but how I would suggest doing this, if you're not confident, I am confident Tom Aspinall, you know, you have to, if you're at this point in the UFC, the jitters, you can't bet on the jitters or worry about that. You can't assume that he's going to be super nervous, not super nervous. You have to expect that he's a professional. His mindset's ready for the main event. His team's behind him and he's ready to go. But to protect yourself on a betting standpoint, see where the night goes. If you are up money, that's where you can decide how many units you want to go or if you want to pull back. So that's how I would kind of play it if you're a little uncomfortable there.
Well, hey, if you're watching the show, you're going to be up money come time the main event, right? Because that's all this show does, is making money. Am I right, Ian Parker? Let's go to the co-main event, 145 pounds. It's the first time that Dan Hooker has been there since 2016. He's obviously been fighting at lightweight, as we all know, taking on Arnold Allen, who is on a 7-fight win streak. Very, very, very impressive. 7 or 8? Is it 8-fight win streak, potentially, I think, for Arnold Allen? Either way, he's been very, very, very good. I got to say, Ian, I am slightly surprised that Arnold is not a little bit of a favorite here, and that is just because, again, Hooker hasn't been here at this weight class for a long time, and Arnold Allen is on such a run. I don't think he has any real holes in his game. What did you make of the line, and how are we playing it?
Well, look, Dan Hooker has been at 145 before. He is a professional. He's going to make weight, even though he looked kind of terrible a few days ago when he talked about the jet lag. But I agree with you. There's something about Arnold Allen. It doesn't matter the level of competition here. His style really, I think, actually plays in favor against someone like Dan Hooker. We've seen Dan Hooker get taken down and held down in fights. I like Arnold Allen's cardio. I like what he did against Sadiq Youssef. You know, that's a guy who was a very talented striker. They were saying if Allen stood with him for 3 rounds, he would lose. He didn't. He led the dance. He dictated the pace. And I really like what I saw to him. But no matter what, you still have to realize Dan Hooker is still someone who has fought top-level competition, not in 1 but 2 weight classes. So, and to your point, Arnold Allen, last 8 wins, but 7 out of those 8 have come by decision. Dan Hooker's last 3 wins have come by decision. So, for me, because I think this is such a step up for Arnold Allen, although I do like him to win and to win by decision, I think this fight just goes the distance. We can play it a little bit safer here. And that's where I'm going to go with this. I don't see either one of them having that style of finishing. Allen isn't necessarily a finisher. I think for him, getting this win in a co-main event spot in his backyard is the most important thing. So this fight's going bell to bell.
Yeah, I agree with you, obviously, in the step up in competition. You know, I think Dan Hooker has been sort of nice about that and said, well, he doesn't have the big names on his record, but he's fought good competition. It's kind of both. It's kind of both. You know, I do think that Arnold Allen still is a little unproven at 145, not because of anything that he hasn't done, just because of the nature of the way in which they've matched him up. You say the fight goes the distance. How do you see it going? When this fight actually starts stylistically, how do you see the fight going, Ian?
Well, if I'm Arnold Allen, I'm using my wrestling game. I'm pushing the pace. You know, I'm really pressuring. And against Sadiq Youssef, he kind of laid back on the striking a little bit. I think Arnold Allen's going to kind of ragdoll a little bit in the wrestling department. He'll use that striking to get him down. But Dan Hooker's just so tough. He's not someone that gets put away so quick unless he's fighting Islam Makhachev. So I think Allen kind of imposes his will, dictates the pace, and really relies on his grappling.
All right, let's move to 155 pounds. You got Paddy Pimlet taking on Vargas, and you know, Paddy Pimlet. I mean, this guy, it's reminiscent, you know, and you don't want to make always the Conor McGregor comparisons because they're a little lazy, right? But it is slightly reminiscent of when this guy went home for the first time, fought in the UFC in Dublin. This is not exactly home for Paddy Pimlet. He is from Liverpool, but I think he's going to get a huge reception in England. He made a good point to me that, you know, I kind of always am thinking, like, when he's walking out and he's getting all that love, that's great for him. What does it do to his opponent? And Paddy said that this guy's going to lose the fight during my walkout. He's going to be intimidated. He's not going to know how to handle that. He's never dealt with anything like that before. I thought that was an interesting point. It's a big line, Ian, minus 550 for Paddy Pimlet. How are you thinking about trying to bet this one?
Well, look, we love hearing about Paddy saying Scousers don't get knocked out. Granted, that first fight, look, people are saying wait till he fights someone who is well-rounded and can take him out. What people don't realize, if you go and look back at Paddy Pimlet, 41% of his wins, 7 of them out of his career are by submission. The guy can fight everywhere. He is very talented. Look, he's got personality for days. The haircut's hilarious. The way he speaks, he's so confident. This guy has the potential to be a megastar. Now it's time to get to the cage, get past the walkout where, yeah, that may be intimidating towards his opponent because the roof is going to blow off the place. For me, it's Paddy Pimlet inside the distance, whether it's a knockout or submission. I think he is leaps and bounds better than his opponent. I think stylistically wise, this was a good move to throw Paddy's way, especially at the O2 Arena. So we're going to ride that Paddy train inside the distance and cash this bet.
Yeah, I like it. Minus 175. And you know he's going to be going for the finish the entire time. So if somehow this fight is not finished, it won't be for lack of effort, because I can tell you right now, Paddy Pimlet will be looking to finish this fight aggressively the entire time. Okay, let's move on to Gunnar Nelson versus Takashi Soto. We haven't seen Gunnar Nelson for a bit, Ian, but that has not stopped the odds makers from making him a minus 500 favorite on Saturday. Now, of course, part of that might be the Takashi Soto taking this fight on short notice as Gunnar lost his original opponent. But what do you think about the return of Gunnar Nelson? He's fought here in England before, and will it be a good night for him against Soto on Saturday?
For me, there's only one way to play this. You know, look, Takashi's coming off a loss, a broken orbital, and fight on short notice against someone in Gunnar Nelson who has good enough striking to get this to a place where he's most comfortable and very dominant. That's on the ground. So for me, it's got to be Gunnar Nelson by submission if he does win this fight. Otherwise, the odds are just way too high to bet on this. And at minus 120, Nelson getting a sub, I really like that play.
Okay, moving right along to Molly Meatball McCann. Everybody loves Molly, especially here in England. I believe she is going to get a hero's welcome at the O2 as well. She's taking on Luana Carolina, who is plus 120. Molly McCann, the small favorite at minus 140. What do we think, Ian? We going with Molly at home, or do we like the plus value on Carolina?
This is probably not going to be the most fan favorite play here. I'm struggling to take Molly McCann in this one. You know, in her last fight, it was a war, but I think she fought someone not as good as Carolina. And Luana Carolina beat Lupita Godinez that everyone really had. She showed her takedown defense. She showed her striking, high fight IQ. For me, I'm going to go with Carolina and to win by decision. You're going to get a lot better odds than just a plus 120. Molly doesn't get finished, but I think she doesn't also put enough output out there. And if she can't get to the floor, I think she may be in a little bit of trouble here. I'll be rooting for her, but if you're going to bet this, I think the value is on Carolina.
Okay, so we're taking the dog there in the 5th fight on the main card. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. The 6th fight, it's actually opening the main card on ESPN+. Ilia Topuria taking on Jai Herbert. Ilia Topuria, a big-time favorite, minus 490. Herbert coming back at plus 370. Topuria has been in the headlines this week, Ian. He went after our guy, Paddy Pimlet. Paddy apparently threw a bottle of hand sanitizer at him. Some fun stuff going on there at the Fighter Hotel. What do you think of Topuria on Saturday, though? Again, man, big-time favorite, minus 490.
Yeah, I wish he would kind of be a little bit smarter. You know, he's got a fight coming up on Saturday. There's no reason to put yourself in a position to either get yourself suspended or injured over a scrap in a locker room over some Twitter stuff. You know, I understand the whole country thing, but for Topuria, he's been very impressive so far. I think he's one of the better prospects that we've seen in a really long time. I think he gets this fight done. He will be in our parlay. I can't pass up on him getting some value. But for me in this one-on-one matchup, if you're going to bet this one straightforward, I like him to win by submission. I think Herbert's got good hands. I think Topuria knows where he really has the heavier favorite in the situation here, and that's on the ground. So Topuria by sub, you're going from minus 490 to plus 138.
Well, it's an interesting one, man, because the last time that the UFC was in the O2 Arena, Jorge Masvidal got into a back of the house scuffle with Leon Edwards, and you don't see that very often. You do not see that at UFC events. They're very, very good. The security is great. They make sure that nobody touches each other, right? Maybe if Paddy Pimlet and Ilia Topuria is doing an interview, I'll keep an eye out for the other one, because we could have a repeat at the O2 on Saturday. All right, let's go ahead and move on to your parlay. You mentioned it as you were talking about the Topuria fight. What are we doing for the parlay, which is, again, has hit for 4 weeks in a row? How are we doing at number 5?
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to hit a 5th one in a row? I would love that. So we are going to go with Ilia Topuria Paddy, Pimlet. Funny how they hate each other, but I am pairing them up for this one. We're also going with Pavlovich, and we're going to, last but not least, we're going to go with McCann here, and that's going to get us at plus 219. These are 4 of the heavier favorites on the card without having to go through method of victory. I think they all get it done, and why not get a little value of 2-1 on it?
All right, 2-1 for our parlay this week, going for that 5th one in a row. Some of those picks, of course, taking place on the prelims, so let's get to the prelims, Ian. We're going to bring it up, take a look at the rest of those prelims on ESPN Plus and run through your picks.
Let's start off with Jack Shore versus Valiev here. This fight, I think, is flying under the radar. I like Shore to win this fight. He is one of my favorite prospects out there. I think his cardio and grappling can get it done. Pay attention to the prop and him winning by decision as well. Corey McKenna by decision here. I think she is better than Elise Reed everywhere. Instead of minus 280, get her to win by decision at minus 110. And look, Bukaya versus Durden, this is another prospect who has got confidence. Someone we were talking about, but he's got to show it to us first. So I think he gets it done inside the distance. That takes us from minus 400 to minus 110. Mike Grundy versus Mahwan Amirkhani. Look, Amirkhani is a submission specialist, but we've seen time and time again his cardio dumps in the second round. Grundy is tough, good everywhere, good grappling, smart fighter, and he's going to have his father there, who we saw in one of the interviews, is sick. Emotion's going to play a factor. I like Grundy there. Let me get Pavlovich and Shamil under 1.5 rounds. Someone is going to sleep. Hopefully it's not our guy Sergey. Last but not least, Krylov versus Paul Craig. I've been going back and forth from this one. I'm going based on level of competition and fight IQ. Give me Krylov to win this fight. As long as Paul Craig can pull off another magical submission, I think he'll be safe there.
Yeah, well, you mentioned as long as he doesn't pull off a magical submission, but he's very good at pulling off magical submissions, man. I mean, this guy,
he's quite the magician. He's quite the magician.
Who is just on a rocket ship now. I mean, Ankalaev, you know, I know that his 5-rounder, he went to the distance on it. Some fans were not super impressed, but this guy is right there at the top of the division. Paul Craig beat him. I asked you a question earlier on the show about confidence. How confident are you going against a guy who, yeah, I mean, he might be losing every second of this fight, but his submission skills are such a deal breaker. And what have you seen out of Krylov that makes you think that, you know what, it's not going to happen in England?
Well, look, you know, when Paul Craig got that submission over Ankalaev in the last second, I really have nothing to say about that. I just think that he is someone who was in no-quit situation, had to throw the submission up, was losing terribly throughout the entire fight. But against Jamal Hill is, you know, look, that was a matchup where we all said that if it goes to the floor, can Jamal Hill avoid the submission? And he didn't really look like he had a clue what he was doing, even being on top. And Paul Craig took advantage. Although I still think Jamal Hill will be a future champion one day. He learned from it. But when it comes to the stand-up, Paul Craig's a little sloppy. You know, it's not very technical. We have seen him eat shots before. We've seen him get dropped against Alonzo Mendenfield. And I think Nikita Krylov has just fought the better level of competition. When he's on the floor, he keeps himself out of bad positions. He has lost by sub before, but I think he knows what he's doing here. And I'm going to go with Krylov. Not overly confident, but I like him to win this fight.
Well, the odds makers are with you at minus 190, and I thought that was interesting that you threw in there. Do you think Jamal Hill is going to be a future champion someday? That's interesting. That is high praise.
I do.
You know, you also had high praise for Jack Shore, and I want to know why. You mentioned that he's one of your favorite prospects in the sport. That's interesting to me. What do you like about Jack Shore, and what do you like about him in this matchup?
Well, look, he's fighting someone who has good striking. We saw against Hani Barcelos, you know, but we also have seen the cardio situation there, and for me, Jack Shore just is somebody who knows exactly who he is, and he continues to get better with every single fight. And he's not fighting bad competition. He's not taking on lesser prospects. He's fighting people that are correct for where he is at. He knows when to use his grappling. He knows when to use his striking. He knows when he's losing. He knows when to step it up and press the gas pedal. We saw in that last fight, he was in a little bit of a war here. There is just his positioning. He's just that fight IQ. You don't see it so often with these younger guys, and that undefeated record speaks for itself. He's not fighting lesser opponents. And I think this is someone here who should not be the underdog. I think that's going based on level of competition because Valiev beat Barcelos. But I still like Shore here. He's kind of a decision machine, but, you know, at plus 100, I'm good there.
Well, it should be a very, very, very fun night of mixed martial arts in England. Again, you can watch it on ESPN Plus, UFC Fight Night. We were talking about last week how they've always been at the Apex, and the Apex has been great for them. They set some milestone. I now even forget what it was, but it was so many fights at live events at the Apex. I believe that they will continue to do that, but I'm looking forward to getting into that arena and hearing those fans cheer for the English fighters. So we're going to have a good night. It's going to be a fun night of fights. Now we just need to get to your best bets. Ian, where are we going with the best bets on UFC Fight Night?
And here we go, main event. I'm rolling the dice on Tom Aspinall. Again, I think his power, I think he's a good, precise striker, but that ground game is where it needs to be. Arnold, Allen, Dan Hooker, instead of worrying about if Allen's ready or if Hooker's ready to go back to 45, 7 out of 8 wins by decision for Allen. 3 out of his last 3 for Hooker decision. Fight goes a distance of -150. We cannot not do something with Paddy the Baddy. So inside the distance for me, it doesn't have to be a knockout or submission. I don't care how it happens. As long as it happens before the fight ends, we're good. I'm going Mike Grundy here against Murakami. I think his wrestling and I think his cardio should be what really gets it done. This fight means a lot to him. And we talked about Jack Shore earlier in the show. Not only would I take it at +100, but Brett, look, at by decision, +225. That's usually how he wins his fights. And last but not least, we're going for that 5th parlay in a row. Paddy Pimlet, Taporia, Pavlovich, and McCann. And we're going to add Makayev to get at that +219. Let's get it going.
Very nice, a +225 on your best bet. And I like the Mike Grundy pick. This fight does mean a lot to him. He dedicated it to his father, who was terminally ill, said he lived at the gym, got away from his family, went to the gym, and he does look laser focused this week. So we shall see, Ian. It's been a fun show. It's going to be a fun night of fights on Saturday. Can't wait for it. Thank you for tuning in to UFC Best Bets. We will be back again for UFC Fight Night in Columbus next week. Take care.